Thank you for being here today on a nice fall day. Fall seems like it may be finally here. For those of y'all that don't know, I'm Brad Rock. I'm superintendent here in Stokes County. I was told sometime you didn't say who you were, so I always try to do that now. And just in case you don't know, thank you for being a part of the Superintendent's Advisory Council. Real quickly, before we kind of get going a little bit, I just want to talk just a second about the purpose of this. This is a big district. Compared to Wake County or Forsyth County, no, it's not. But we have 19 schools, which for a lot of districts, that is, that might be 19,000 students, 20,000 students with that many different schools. And so it's hard to be out in a lot of schools for people to hear what I'm talking about or to talk to me. So kind of like representatives in the House of Representatives, that's what the Superintendent Advisory Council is, what I would kind of like for it to be. As you meet with your groups, as you hear questions come up, you can express things that you've heard in here, or you can listen, take notes, and as we come back, have a chance to share those things. And so I try to make myself pretty open as a superintendent to be in your buildings, to send out surveys like the other week. I answer phone calls and emails and those type of things as well. But, not everybody takes advantage, and sometimes I keep hearing, well, how do we express things, So this is just another avenue to try to give people a way to express things to make things better for our district. Because that ultimately is my job, is to try to make Stokes County schools better. I also would like to say that, we've tried to represent most, if not all, areas. I realized last year I was told that we didn't have a guidance counselor on the council. So this year we have a guidance counselor, or school counselor, I'm sorry, we made that switch a few years ago. I'm still stuck in my old age. We have a school counselor with us today. Also, I've been asked about why is there so few teachers represented on the council. And part of that is there is no perfect time to hold this meeting. After school, there's lots of tutoring, parent conferences, coaching. Y'all know as well as I do, teachers your job doesn't end at 3:30 or 2:30 or 3 o'clock. So if we had a meeting after school, then our classified people are off the clock and can't be here. And so there's not a great time to do this, but we are videoing, this meeting, and we will send that link out to staff so that they can hear it as well if they would like to. And I will have a survey up that if anybody that watches the video would like to submit a question, they can do that as well. Again, I'm trying to give as many avenues for feedback as possible and to get the message out. With that being said, we kind of got a packed agenda today, so I'm going to go ahead and just get started with it. I've asked Michael Sands to talk about our testing results from last year, just to kind of let you know, as from a district perspective, how we did. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Sands at this time.
All right, I have to begin by saying to you this morning, I gave up something to be here. A few people know what that was. I gave up going to the dentist to be here. So with that said, this is probably as exciting as the dentist. But anyway, it is what it is, and it is a good way of us seeing what our district is doing. I will go ahead and tell you that there is a link for this presentation off of the district webpage. So if you go to the accountability page, there on the district website, and then this link will take you to a PDF version of this PowerPoint. So stop me at any point if you have any questions. If not, I'm going to quickly go through this. This was presented to the board back on the 18th of September. And so as you can see, we were still, last year we were one of 39 districts statewide that had all schools at C or higher. This year we were one of 40, so still right there in the top. Participation rate of 96.4, and one of our areas that we're still struggling is with work keys and the identification process there at the high school, so that was the 2 targets that we missed. Early college was back to an A, which congratulations to that school. We had 9 schools that were B's, and then C schools, we had 8 of those. And then Meadowbrook continue to have that maintaining designation, which means they're continuing to make the progress that we expect them to do. And then we have the highlights. We have one school, King Elementary, congratulations again. They exceeded growth this year, only school in our county. and then we had 12 schools that met growth, and the remaining did not meet the growth that the state expected of those schools. When we look at the school performance grade, as you know, that's the letter grade and the number tied to that. This past year, 9 of our schools actually showed an increase in the overall grade that they received. 1 school remained the same, and then 9 had a decrease, and most of those were very minor decreases, but they were still decreases. Letter grades, we actually had 4 schools that went up, so they were probably C's last year, went up to B's. We did have one that went from a B to an A, that was early college, and then the 14 others remained the same as they had the previous year. No schools in our district was below a C, so again, that's a very good positive. Again, some highlights of our EOC, EOG proficiency. Our female students continue to exceed the state average in terms of their proficiency rate. We were at 62.7. Our male students exceeded the state as well. They weren't quite as far above the state, but again, we were still above the state at 57.8. And again, even though our males were only slightly above the state, they still had a 0.8 increase over the previous year. So a positive there. Reaching out to those males and female students. And if any of you have ever been in the classroom, you know that you do reach those 2 sets of students differently. So as we're moving forward, that's some of the things that the curriculum directors are talking about and looking at ways that we can address male versus females differently. Economically disadvantaged, again, we were up 49.6, but again, we're still higher than the state average. Positive there. Cohort graduation rate. We were at 87% this past year, which put us 58th. That was a slight decrease from the past year. However, we continue still to be above the state average. 3 of our 5 schools had a graduation rate that was greater than 90%, and Meadowbrook, again, had the highest rate, I think, in school history at 60%. So they continue to increase every year. We want them to get above 67. That's a magic number this year that has a certain designation with this new ESSA. Just some other highlights. You can see that we're 48th in terms of our overall performance composite. We did drop in that sense in terms of our ranking. If you look at all the districts, same would be true for the performance composite with college and career readiness. I want to make a distinction what those really mean. Grade level proficiency, as you know, our EOCs and EOGs are scored 1 to 5 levels. Grade level proficiency is considered anything 3 or higher, so that includes our 3s. College and career readiness, meaning students are prepared and ready to go on to college based on their current performance, that's our 4s and 5s, so that's why there's a slight difference in those numbers. ACT, we continue to do well there. We're at 23rd out of the 115 school districts in the state. Again, an increase there, and you can see how we compared against the state. 43rd in terms of our work keys, and again, something that we strive to improve upon, but work keys is still above the 50% mark. Then we want to compare to our 16 counties that are in our consortium, the Piedmont Triad region. We were 4th in our ACT proficiency of those 16. We were 5th in our cohort graduation rate, and I do want to point out this is the 5-year, which is slightly different from what the state reports as the 4-year. So there's a difference there. We did drop a little bit in terms of our 4-year cohort graduation rate across those 16 districts. 7th of the 16 in English 2, and 6th in terms of our GLP, or grade level proficiency. This is just the trend data to let us see how our schools did across all the past 3 years. And as you can see, the final 3 columns is the school performance grade with the actual score in parentheses. And then you've got the growth index. Any of you that are teachers, you know the growth index, what that comes out of EVOS. So there is a calculation there based on how much impact our schools are having on our students. And so this is our growth index for this past year. And then you can see our growth status in the very last column. Again, all but one of our elementary schools met or exceeded growth. And so that will be something that we take a look at and focus on assisting that school in that manner. Same information for our middle schools. And again, middle schools, something happens with that transition. Again, Doug and I have had that conversation. We're looking at what's going on in our middle schools that change from elementary to middle. We're going from elementary schools to meet growth or exceed growth, and then all of a sudden they hit our middle schools and we drop in our performance. They still maintain a C, but as you can see, The cutoff for being a C is a 55. Okay, so it's a 15-point scale, so 55 is the lowest C you can have. The one school that was a C of a 55 was just thousandths away of a rounding point of being a D. So again, we know we've got some work to do. High schools, same information. We did have A, we had 2 Bs there, and then the 1 C that had a negative growth there this past year, working towards that as well, trying to see what's going on and affecting that information. So before we move on, any questions on those 3 charts? That's probably the most detailed and the most important information, kind of is the reflection. I will tell you that when the actual state report card is released in November, you will also see letter grades based solely on reading and math. This is the overall grade, but there is some differences in some of those grades. We did have a few Ds in certain subject areas, so just know that this is the overall grade that we're looking at in terms of what's reported in the state. This is just a chart explaining the difference in performance grade, the actual, where I told you some went up, some went down. This shows you which ones went up, which ones went down. And several went up. When we look at that, we see a positive 8, which is a great increase, but then we had the same in the opposite end, negative 7, negative 6. So again, that just gives us some areas to know where we need to focus on helping those schools continue. Graduation trend. Again, I pointed that out, that Meadowbrook, for the 3rd year in a row, has highest graduation rate, I think, of that school has had in history. But then you see the ranking, how we compare against all schools that actually have a graduating class. So there was 532 across the state, and where they ranked in comparison to that. Early college, notice they had 100% this past year graduating students in the 5-year. They're different than the others in that they have a 5-year rate because of the early college being part of Forsyth Tech. But they were at 100%. And I made a statement, I said, I don't know exactly where they ranked, and somebody pointed out, well, they were number 1, but we don't know exactly how many others were number 1 in that relationship. But there was 134 because the state only reports greater than 95% because they don't want to point out individual students that may not make it. So we don't know how many were 100%, but still, top 134, that's pretty good. That's actually excellent. I wish we could continue that across all the schools. Breaking it down again across each individual subgroup within that, and again, we do have to focus on different populations differently, so you can see there how some went up, some went down, and some maintained where they were at. But this is just a graduation rate by each one of those subgroups for the district. Comparison within our region, again, in terms of the reading, math, and science scores for the elementary. And this is just our ranking, again, amongst the 16 districts. So we were first in math in 3rd grade across the 16 districts in our consortium. 3rd in the reading for 3rd grade, and then you go all the way up and you can see the other numbers there. 7th and 8th grade, some areas, again, of concern that we need to work on. And so that's the things that we'll be looking at moving forward. Here's the elementary as compared to the state in terms of the actual percentage and the rank within the state. And just that's of the 115 school districts across the state. So again, you can see how we're performing. They're doing in top, we were 10th in 3rd grade across the state. So again, ideal. I mean, we've got some selling points there for Stokes County. Then we've got all the way up. So in all of these, we're at least at the 50% mark or better. Middle schools, as I've said, we begin to show a decline, whatever happens there. We're trying to figure that out. If anybody's got any magic answers, let us know. But we'd like to see our middle school students perform better than they did. But again, remember, half of 115 is what? Somebody help me out. 57? Is that right? 57, 58. So we're looking at 57, 58 to see if we're at 50% mark or better than 50% of the district. We have some of those that are on the threshold, some of those that are below this, the 50% mark. So again, areas that we want to focus on. High schools, this is where we ranked again. comparison to the 115 school districts across the state in Math 1, Biology, and English 2, which is the 3 tested areas for our high schools. 62% there, or 62nd, excuse me, in Math 1. I will tell you that this Math 1 includes the students who took Math 1 at the 8th grade level. That is not solely high school, but it is collective of our Math 1. And then you can see where our biology falls at 75th. Again, something we're trying to figure out what's going on there with those areas. 3-year trend, you can see that and you can just see how we've improved. The final column is probably the most important in this sense, is that how we've changed over the last year. And as you notice there with the elementary, all have shown improvement. If we continue the trend to continue to show improvements, we're doing something right. So that's what we want to continue. And then you see the negatives pop up in our middle schools. We know that's not the same set of students, but are we in the mindset? We have to ask ourselves, are we in the mindset what we did with last year's group is the same thing we need to do with this year's? It's obvious it's not. But again, where we made that change. 3-year trend for our high school courses, and again, I've added ACT work keys and math course rigor, which again is 3 other components that make up our school performance grade for those high schools. And again, you can see, with the exception of biology, all of the math showed an improvement over the previous year. Any questions? All right, again, just to point out, that is posted on the district website, and you can pull it up and share that with your staff, or have your principal share that with your staff, or you can point it to anyone that wants to see that information.
One thing I try to look at data is kind of like baking a cake. Sometimes you might mess up something along the way a little bit and you get something wrong. But at the end of the day, when you take that bite of cake, that's your test, is what was that finished product? And yes, we have some things that we need to work on, and we're going to work on those. I know we have a dedicated staff that's going to look to make those things happen. At the end of the day, when you say, well, what kind of education can you get in Stokes County schools? 23rd in ACT data for the passing rate for that, and 23rd in the state in graduation rate. So a top 0.25% in the state. So by the end of it, when it all comes together, you can get a way above average education here in Stokes County. Are there other things that we need to work on? Absolutely. And I don't think anybody's saying we're good enough, we can stop trying to improve. But the end product results are pretty good as well. But I appreciate you going over that to kind of let us know where our students are. Now I want to talk about where our staff are. Last week I sent out the survey, and with 4 questions to say, you know, what is something that I've done to make Stokes County schools better? What's something that I've done in which you disagree or don't understand? And what's one thing that I need to improve on personally? And then what's one thing I could do to improve Stokes County schools? I sent that out as an anonymous survey on purpose because I wanted people to feel free to answer the questions honestly. Now I have a problem. I don't know how to get people the answers that have asked me questions. So that's one of the reasons that this is being recorded today and will be shared. And not that I'm going to go over each one individually, but I'm here to ask you as well, what format do you think it would be good to answer some of the common things that have come up? Now, yes, one person said they would like for me to wear a brighter color sport coat, so I wore pink today to try to help that person out as well. I don't have the pink sport coat. Don't know that I ever will, but I did wear a pink shirt today to try to help out with that. So I'll try to help some of those individual one-on-one ones as we go. And I'm not trying to make light of that, but I do want to answer those questions. And so when I look at this, there were several things that did bubble up to the top. And I want to answer a couple of those with you as a group that we'll share with the video. But I also, after we get done, I want to ask some other ideas that I've had, but I want to get your ideas as well, because there's a lot more of you, and I know group think is better than me think any day. But I'll also say that there's also conflicting things that come up in the survey. When I looked at this yesterday and kind of compiled responses, 138 people had answered the survey out of roughly 950 employees that it went out to, which some would say, well, that's not a very good rate, and some would say that in statistics would say that's a very good response rate. Either way, it's data. So some of those conflicting things, 42% or 42 of those 138, so about 30% of the respondents said that one thing that I do well is I'm in schools a lot. 8 people, which is 6%, said I need to be in schools. Okay, and you know what? They're both right. Because I am in schools, and they might not have seen me, and I might have missed them. So I need to try to do a better job of making sure I see everyone. And I realized the other day that I usually end up at Lawsonville at lunch every time I go there. And so I go by a lot of empty classrooms. And so when it hit me, when I read that and then thought about the day before walking through Lawsonville, seeing people going to the lunchroom, I thought, you know what? I need to change my pattern. Because I usually do end up there at lunch for some reason. So maybe I need to start my day at Lawsonville. And some of that's me being lazy and saying, I want to finish my route close to the office around 1 o'clock so I can do the paperwork in the afternoons. But I can change my pattern. So, you know, those 8 people were probably right. They'd not seen me in their classrooms teaching. And I'm not saying they're all at Lawsonville, but I have similar patterns and I need to change my patterns up. 19 people said that I was approachable, a real person, they enjoyed talking with me, stuff like that. 18 said I need to be friendlier. And you know what? They're right. Because and especially outside of the school setting. So I am saying this to everyone. I struggle with names. I do. I know that's one of my weaknesses, and I am working on it. Again, there's 950 of you. There's about 35 more thousand in the county. And so if I see you at Walmart and I don't speak to you, speak to me. I might say, they look familiar. Do I know them from this or this or this, or was it one of our schools? I don't know everyone yet, but I will promise I will keep trying to do better. But feel free to speak to me and feel free to come up and say, hi, I work at South Stokes. How are you? I love that. There's one person that works at Mount Olive that always introduces themselves and say, and I teach at Mount Olive. And I always say, thank you, and I'm your superintendent. And I'm not going to start out, but I appreciate that because I do need that help. So if you could offer that support, I would appreciate that as well. But the big thing that came up that people didn't understand was our calendar and snow days and leave. And we tried to work on that last year, but obviously didn't get the message to everyone. So, Michael, if I could get you to get some help and pass those out. I want to go over that a little bit today so that you will understand and can help spread this word to our staff about these issues. Several people said we would like the calendar to start earlier in the year so we could finish exams before Christmas break. I want that as well. I absolutely want that. Every time I meet with legislators, I'm not going to say every time, that's a lot of times when I meet with legislators, I talk about that very issue. That is a legislated issue in the general statute of when we can start school. Now, we could get close to finishing up before Christmas break if we started. Now, this year is probably even tougher because the way that it's worded, the last 3 years we've had to start extremely late. But if you went every day with no break, no work days, no anything, you could get close. If you shorten the semester just a little bit, you could get close. But it would be a lot of burnout because there would be no breaks, no time for conferences, no time for anything. But the legislative calendar really prevents us from doing that. So please be an advocate with legislators. To be honest, I'm just going to be honest with you, this has to do with money. There's lobbies for the coastal, it borders the state. The coast had a Save Our Summers group several years ago that wanted the longer summer, thinking that that would increase tourism dollars for our state. The mountains have all the camps in the summer, and they want workers. So we have both competing ends of our state that are fighting us on this, and their lobbyists are winning. So, but that's kind of the reason, but the end of the answer is that's a general statute issue that we're not allowed to change in Stokes County. The only way we could apply for a waiver for that is if we had enough weather that we met the threshold, and we're not there. If we did, we would move it. If we get legislative relief, I believe that the board would approve us going earlier. I think we all know this would be better for kids, but we're just not allowed to yet. The other issue is snow days, and I'll kind of go with this together. For the general statute for school calendars, it's 115C-84-2. Now, there's two sets of rules, and this is very important to understand that there are two sets of rules that we must adhere to. One is for students. The other is for staff. And they are treated different legislatively in our calendar. Therefore, we're required to treat them different. So sometimes people will say, well, why do the students do different things? Well, because there's different sets of rules. For teachers, the calendar consists of 215 days. 215 days. For students, they are required to have 185 instructional days or 1,025 instructional hours. Those are minimums for students. For teachers, it doesn't mention hours because they know y'all would all be done by Christmas because of the hours that you put in. But your calendar consists of 215 days. Now, I've got the notes in there that if we leave school early, if a front comes in early and we leave school early, we can count a full day. So if we dismiss at 12, we still get to count the full day for that. But if we start on a delay 2 or 3 hours, we have to subtract those hours. That's just the legislative rules. But for teachers, there are 10 vacation days, annual leave days in the calendar. The same number of holidays as the State Human Resources Commission for state employees, and that's different for 12-month employees versus 10-month employees, because 12-month employees get the 4th of July off. So where we might get 12 and you get 11, but we have to have the same equivalent number of days, and that's very important because they don't all have to be the same day, but we have to have the same equivalent number of holidays in our calendar. The remaining days, I missed work days in here somewhere. The remaining days may be scheduled as work days, additional instructor days, or other lawful purposes, and at least 2 of those must be designated as not required work days when teachers could take annual leave if they wanted to. At least 2 of those. Those are our optional work days in the calendar. So, and the total number of teacher work days, which are working days for teachers for a 10-month period, shall not exceed 195 days. And then there must be at least 42 consecutive days for 10-month teacher attendance is not required, and that's your summer vacation. School shall not be held on Sundays, so we can't do any makeup days on Sunday. And then the equivalent holidays, there is one exception to that, is Veterans Day will be a holiday. Out of all the holidays in the calendar, you can count on Veterans Day because that one will be there. And if it's on a Saturday, then we take it on a Friday, and if it's on a Sunday, we take it on a Monday. Otherwise, it's during the week. But Veterans Day will be a holiday. Now, this is where our calendar law gets into the restrictive part. The opening day for students will be no earlier than the Monday closest to August 26th. So if August 26th is on a Tuesday, we could start on Monday because the 25th, because that's the closest Monday. But if it's Friday, then it would be the next Monday, which means we start late, which is what the pattern we've been in for the last couple of years. I think we have one more year of that, and then we finally get back to starting around the 24th, 25th, and will really help us out. And then the closing day for students will be no later than Friday closest to June 11th. So that's why we start when we do, and that's why we end where we do, is because of the general statute. So what does that look like in our schools? For the traditional calendar for teachers, the calendar began this year on 8/17/2017. And I see a mistake I made on here, and it will end on 6/13. It won't end 2017, it'll end 2018. My proofreading abilities go up tremendously in front of a group, and so I see that. So with that, there are 44 weeks in the calendar for teachers. That's 42 full weeks and 2 partial weeks. So in that, there are 43 Sundays that we can't have school. There are 215 weekdays and 43 Saturdays. And you might say, well, why are we talking about that? And I'll get to that in a minute. There's 176 instructional days in our calendar for students. That's covering, if you look at a 6-hour day, that's 1,052 instructional hours, which is more than our 1,025, which gives us some flexibility for late, start dates and, for, 2-hour delays, 3-hour delays, or other things. There are 11 holidays in that calendar starting 8/17, ending on 6/13. There are 10 annual leave days, and there are 18 work days, and 4 have been designated as required staff development days of those 18. Now, the law, and if anybody goes back and looks at the law and it says, well, it says that a minimum of 10 annual leave days can be in there. You're right, it does. We could have more annual leave days in our calendar. The problem with that is, if you remember back to when you first started working, you only earned a small amount. So if we require more annual leave days, we're basically forcing young educators to take a day without pay. So we keep it to the low amount because that's what they earn. If everybody earned 2 days a month, we could put more annual leave days in the calendar. But if we do that, the young people don't get paid on those days when we take off because they don't have that amount of leave. And that's important when we talk about snow days. So on the calendar, and the back of your page is our calendar, we have 176 student days. Those are white days on the calendar. They're not colored in, except for the July dates. Once we start the calendar on August 17th and between June 13th, in that range, the white days are the student days. There are 18 blue days. Those are work days. Darker blue is the required work day, but blue are all work days. There are 11 red days. Those are holidays. And 10 annual leave days. Those are yellow on the calendar. So, what happens when it snows? And I've had people say, well, you close school for students, but you don't for teachers. Do you care more about the student? Not. But I'm not allowed to create colored days. I can only exchange them. Because, like I said, there's blue days, there's red days, and there's yellow days. So if we don't have school, I have to make it a colored day. Red, blue, or yellow. If I say it's a yellow day, I have to move it from one yellow day to that day. That became an annual leave day. And then the yellow day would become a white day, which would be for students. Or like last year, which you'll see in my example, I did a 3-way switch so that we could try to have school and keep everything normal. But if I say it's closed for teachers and students, I have to make that a color that corresponds with that. So I either have to swap it with a holiday, if it's closed for teachers and students, or an annual leave day. Well, if you look at our calendar, the yellow days this year are spring break. The 23rd, 26th, 27th, 28th, 29th. So if in January I were to say this is closed for students and teachers, that means that I either have to make one of those days a work day over spring break, or I make it an annual leave day over spring break, or I swap it with a holiday or a Saturday. Because you will only work the certain amount of days, but the state expects you to work those days or use leave. That's what allows you to be paid when you don't come to work. So that's kind of how that works. So what happens when it snows? Last year, here's our example. Last year, we had snow on January 9th. It actually snowed on Friday evening and Saturday morning, but we were out for snow on Monday, January 9th. January 9th became an annual leave day. It became a yellow day. There was one at the bottom of the calendar after the work days, which really didn't do us a whole lot of good other than being a spare for snow. So we used it. That was the real deep snow that first day, so we made that an annual leave day from June 13th. We exchanged it. January 17th became an instructional day from January 9th. January 9th we were supposed to go to school. The 17th was supposed to be a work day, and June 13th was supposed to be an annual leave day. So January 9th became an annual leave day, the 17th became an instructional day, and then June 13th became a work day after the calendar ended. So then we were still out of school on the 10th. So then January 10th became a work day, and the work day that was February 21st moved to that day, so February 21st became an instructional day. Then we were still out on the 11th, so January 11th became a work day from February 20th, and then February 20th became an instructional day. Again, I am not allowed to create extra colors on the calendar. I can only exchange them. Now, so after those switches, we still had 176 student days, 18 work days, 11 holidays, and 10 annual leave days. So when we make these calls, we make them very intentionally, and I usually say, please refer back to that manual. If we say that it is closed for students, but an optional teacher work day, you may take leave, you may come to work, or, as we put into place last year, you can work with your principal to make up that time if you don't have the leave. It's not that I'm forcing you to get out on the roads. I absolutely, please hear me on this. If you do not feel safe, do not get on the roads and come to school. Do not do it. We will work with you for that. If you would like to take leave, you may do that. If you would like to work with your principal to make up that time, you may do that. But do not say, well, he said I had to come to work, so I have to come to work, and if I wreck my car, no, I'm saying if you don't feel safe, don't come to work. But if I make that a yellow day and say teachers stay home, now I'm requiring you to use your leave. If I make that yellow, I require you to use your leave. And you might say, I live 1 mile from the school and my road's clear. I could have went to work today, but you just made me use leave. So I make it a work day and put it in your decision, rather than me making the decision for you that you can't come to work that day. That's why that decision is made. So if I say it is closed for students and staff, I either have to exchange it for a yellow day, a red day, or a Saturday. So you're still working the same amount of time that you're under contract to work and using the leave when that's appropriate. The other page in here, I use November. Not that we, kind of your next to the last page, is kind of a calendar example for November. And the only reason I use November is because it has every color on there. So if you look at this, and I'm going to be very simple on this. I've got Post-its on here. So if I say that it is no school for students and staff, snows on November 20th, I have to take the yellow day and move it. Did anybody have to work extra? No. Did anybody use the same amount of leave? Yes. All I did was move it. Okay? If I say that it's no school for students and staff, and now that's a bad example, because we can't use Veterans Day. Veterans Day has to be there. And I make the dumb decision that will get me strung up from the trees that on Black Friday we're going to go to school and I'm going to switch that day, which I would never do. But if I did that, did anybody work extra? No. All we did was exchange one for the other. So if I say it's a work day, and we say, okay, I'm going to move the work day to here to cover for snow, did anybody work extra? On that optional teacher work day, did anybody have an opportunity to use their leave? You have the opportunity, or you can come to work. And what we put in place is for weather, you can make up the time. Because I don't want somebody, an early teacher or somebody that's used up their leave, that says, I have no annual leave, and so my choices are not get paid or risk it and come to work and be unsafe. We want another avenue for you. So we put that in place last year. Or you could say, I'm independently wealthy, I don't want to be paid, I'll take a day without pay. That's fine as well. Prove that we get to talk with your principal, we can do that as well. Most of us are not in that boat, we like our paychecks. Does that make sense? Now, here's the question that I get. You know we work a lot of hours. So why can't you just forgive it and say, don't come to work, we know you put in plenty of hours, just be over with it. Because we have things called auditors that come in and check. And so we just need the documentation. We've put it in place that if you will document that with your principal, what your plan is, and work those extra hours that we know you're going to work, just document it, turn it in, and we're good. Does that make sense? Now, you're not allowed to count what you already do, but we know that you all go above and beyond anyway. So when you go above and beyond, it gives you credit for going above and beyond, which we know you do. So, are there any questions about that? Okay, let me ask you this now. I took 10, 12 minutes to go over that.
I have one question.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry. I have two jobs at school. I drop a bus and then I park in the classroom and I drop a bus in the afternoon. Last year when we had the makeup time, I was told that I could not make up that time because I'm already working 10 and a half to 11 hours a day. I chose just to take a ADL day. Because I honestly, I didn't want to go back in after 4 o'clock and work till 6, because I'd be going straight home, and it's an all-day job. My extra job probably starts at 5:30 or quarter past 5 in the mornings. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do, but can we talk about that afterwards and get with
Okay.
some people that are going to have a better answer for you, that because that is a special circumstance.
And I was a little hesitant after you've been asking the question.
But it's a good question. So afterwards, let's get together with the right people to make that answer, because those special ones, I want to make sure I'm saying it right with. Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome. So, with things like weather, that again really bubbled up, that it was obvious it's an emotional issue with some people that felt like we're making people be unsafe. What's the best way to communicate back to staff about something like that? Would an email work? Would asking your principals to go over it again, which I believe they did last year, do that? Would it be better if I worked with the principals to say, hey, I'll be at your school from 7:30 to 7:45 in the media center. I'll go to 19 schools and do this. What would be the best way for you to get that message? And say, if you want to come, you can. It's not mandatory that everybody come. But if you have these questions, show up. Would it be to show up to the SEAE meeting? How would be the best way to communicate back to people?
I think when I hear from you, it's better.
Okay.
Could you do a video, like the whole color exchange thing, like that makes perfect sense to me. Could you do a video and just send it out, and people who
I thought
wanna
about
watch
that.
it, and that way nobody has to go to, I mean, you know, the people who are passionate about it can watch and get information and rewatch it if they need to.
Okay.
As part of that, you could
maybe if everybody gets an email with this attachment to it, so they can.
They have access to all this information we want.
I will say, I shared this with one teacher and they said, that's a lot of words. So I get that when you read that many slides, you can kind of make it brain dead for some people too. And so that's what I'm asking. And you know what? I'm not opposed to all of the above. I'm not opposed to a video and still if you have any questions, I'll be at your school and I'll send out I'm not opposed to all of it. Or if there's other suggestions that you have. The last slide on here, and mine's not stapled, I might have lost mine. Now borrow yours. Yeah, thank you. The last slide on here, and is maybe the most important slide on here, because I want to be explicitly clear with this with all of our staff. Your safety is just important to me as the student's safety. If you do not feel safe traveling to work, please do not come to work. I want to be explicitly clear on that. Do not put yourself in danger. You may use leave. You may use leave to pay you on the days that you don't come to work. That's why you have leave, to pay you on days when you can't come to work. If you're sick, you use sick leave. If you need to go to something personal, you have personal leave. If it's on a work day, you can have annual leave. You know, I save those things up like I'm hoard them, just in case that time ever comes. My insurance agent one day told me, he said, you need short-term disability. And I said, no, I don't. I have 215 sick days because I never use them. I've not used one since I've been here, 15 months. My first 4 years of teaching, I used 3 in 4 years. I hang on to them. I have a family history of heart disease. I may need open heart surgery someday. I need to still pay my bills. I save them for everything they're worth. So if you're sick, you have sick leave. When you need to schedule an appointment on a non-student day, you have annual leave so you can still get paid. And when you need to be absent on a school day, that's when you have those personal leave days. So leave is there so you can get paid when you can't come to work. And that's what we can use for those days as well. But then the state expects you to work 215 days or use leave. If you do not have any leave and you won't/need to get paid and don't feel safe coming to work on a snow day, you may work out an approved schedule with your principal for the makeup time. So beyond all the leave, there's makeup time. But the most important part is if you do not feel safe, do not come to work. And then we'll work out the others later, either leave or makeup time. But I care about your safety. I care about you as individuals. Nothing is going to hurt my heart worse than if somebody runs off the side of the road and injures themselves or, God forbid, dies trying to come to work on an icy road. I do not want to face that as the superintendent. I will have lots of experiences as a superintendent. I do not want that one. So I want to be clear. If we say it's a work day, please do not spite me and drive to work and say, I don't feel safe, but he said I had to, so I'm going to do it. Do not do that. Do not do that. Okay. So videos, send this out. Maybe schedule some school tours as well. When's the next SEAE meeting? Tomorrow? Possibly could stop by maybe?
Tomorrow or November if you want to get it.
Okay. I will try to get the word out as many ways as possible because it came up as very important. So other issues as they come up, same type thing, the scatter format, would that, again, if you won't, and maybe it's the type thing that I just say, would y'all like this? I'm asking you because I don't want to do something that you feel like is not needed or would be a waste. But if you would like for me to schedule one day a month just to show up to hear concerns, I'm happy to do that in person as well. Would you like a survey every once in a while to kind of stimulate thought? You always have access to email me or call me or stop me in the hall. I'm available for that. But are there other ways that you would see or you've heard from your people that you would like to use to express concerns to me? That somebody says, well, I wish he would such and such. Do you have any suggestions?
I like your survey. I think, you know, if you did that quarterly, maybe, you know,
People that might be intimidated face on face. might be
then
more
that you would get some response back, you know.
Okay.
And one thing you could do maybe is put an optional down there, if you want an answer to this question, put your email in here. And if not, then.
And I thought about that, and I thought about doing that. The only problem with that is I didn't want anybody to feel like I was trying to narrow it down.
Right.
And I put the part on here about what role did you play, but I worried about that because I didn't know if, there's only, I didn't want to get too specific. We only have so many school counselors or so many school nurses, 5 or 6 school nurses in that ballpark. 5 school nurses. If I say you're a school nurse, and then I say, and if you'd like to put your email address, do that, and 4 of them do that, well, guess what? Now I know who the 5th one is. So, that's why I didn't want anybody to feel slighted with the other category, but I thought, you know what? These others are a bigger number group, so let's then throw in the category of others. I certainly didn't mean it as a slight to say, well, you don't care about us. No, I'm just trying to keep your anonymity as well. Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Rice and group, I think too, I know a lot of times you'll have organizations that do frequently ask questions and have a place on their website where you can go. So maybe in addition to these videos that people can watch now as these meetings are held, I think that's a very positive thing. And I think also if you could even just have maybe a superintendent's corner, superintendent's blog, and maybe a lot of these questions that are asked over and over, there'd be a place where they could go back to refer and say, oh, okay, that's what he said, and then that way it's uniform, and I think that's the important thing too, that it be the same message.
Okay. Just to let you know, 138 respondents as of yesterday afternoon. 95 were teachers, 17 other, 11 school-based administrators, 6 district-based administrators, 4 data financial secretarial positions, 3 custodian/maintenance positions, and 2 bus drivers. So that's of the 138, still a good cross-reference of respondents in that as well. The other thing I want to talk about real quickly, because I've been asked about this, and Michael mentioned it, of ESSA. We still do not have a state-approved ESSA plan. And I know there's been some questions and concerns about that as well, saying, well, when are we going to find out? Well, when we find out. Now, just like everything in state government, education, we are held accountable for it for the 17-18 school year, yet we don't know how we're going to be made accountable for it yet. I met with a group of superintendents, a small group of superintendents. We met with the state superintendent 2 Fridays ago. And they said our plan has been submitted. We are waiting for approval for that plan and don't know when it will be. We have heard that they have some questions about a few things, so we don't know if it will be approved in the way it was submitted or not, but we will be judged on it at the end of the school year. So, let me tell you how that's going to work. Teach the standards, teach the kids, each day, every day. And however they judge us, let it fall where it may. I hope I've also been clear this year with saying I care more about the 171, 72, 73 days, depending on the grade level, of instruction more than the 3, 4, 5, or 8 days of testing. The testing is just an indicator at the end. The days of instruction are what count. So make your days of instruction count. Teach the standards. Teach each student. When they don't get it, reteach them. And we'll be fine. And the test will fall where it may. It's kind of like, I look at it like stepping on the scale in the morning, which is something I do to beat myself up. If I step on the scale in the morning, and then I do it the next morning, and then do it the next morning, and all I ever do is concentrate on the results and not the time in between, I'm really dumb. Because I can step on it and say, man, I hope it goes down, I hope it goes down, I hope it goes down. Now I'm going to go eat lasagna and cake. Step back on the scale, oh no, it went up. Now I got to hope it goes down, hope it goes down, hope it goes down. And then go eat pie and spaghetti. That's a flawed system, where if I eat right and exercise, the scales will take care of themselves. So take care of our kids, take care of the teaching, do those things, and ESSA will take care of itself. The days of testing take care of themselves when we take care of the days of instruction. So that's my philosophy, and always will be my philosophy for that. So we want to make those instructional days count so the testing days work themselves out. Any other questions or concerns that anybody has shared with you before you come to the meeting that you would like to share? And I maybe will not answer all of them immediately because I might have to do some research. But is there anything, questions, concerns that you're bringing today that we can look at? Yes, ma'am.
I have one from an SEAU member
Okay.
about mileage pay for testing coordinators, because it's a mandatory, like when they go for testing coordinator things, training and such, they don't get paid their mileage back, such as other like administration and people who get mileage pay for mandatory meetings.
All right. I'll check into that.
Thank you.
Any other items that you'd like for me to read? Yes, ma'am.
Like she was mentioning about your blog,
Mhm.
if you could put on there some things that you are working on and doing, because I didn't know how to answer on some of the questions on the survey, because I'm not clear on some of the things that you are doing. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am. And that came through on my survey. I had several responses say, I'd love to give you advice, but I don't know what you do. Could you send out a monthly newsletter, blog, something to kind of let us know what you do? And so, yes,
I
I've,
had a couple of teachers tell me to ask that.
and that is, I've never blogged before really, but I can certainly try to do that.
I was approached by a bus driver wanting to know, it's been probably 5 years ago since we received a bus driver route information in regards of actually the bus driver knowing what they made per hour. And it's for the benefit of knowing what kind of ABL or sick leave or holiday they're getting paid whenever they're not working.
We have actually been talking about that the last few days, and y'all should be receiving that shortly. And also, not to try to get too far out in front of stuff, but it is public knowledge. Last night, the Board of Education approved a new updated driver salary scale that we plan to keep you on. And everybody will receive more money this year than they did in the past. That's the short answer for that. But you will also be receiving compensation sheets in the next couple of weeks at the most.
Another question regarding to that, a new bus driver versus a driver that's been driving for 20 plus years, there's not much difference there in the pay. So it makes you wonder, is it really worth, I'm not trying to do away with the job, but it makes you wonder, in my area, is it worth driving a bus versus a new driver coming in and taking a route over?
Well, and I will say that we certainly value the experience. As somebody that drives a bus on a very irregular basis, I know that when I drive a regular basis, I'm better at it and safer at it
Yes.
than when I don't. So yes, we absolutely value the experience. The state sets a minimum and a maximum salary that we can pay bus drivers. Within that, what we've been working on the last few days that was approved last night is spreading that equally among that between years of experience to make sure that happens. You're right, it's been a bad scale and it's been a frozen scale, and we took action last night to fix that. And so we'll be sharing that information with y'all shortly in the next couple of days.
Thank you.
But absolutely a valid concern. Yes, sir.
I'm gonna ask this, so when you call school for, staff and students, a snow day, say it's on a Monday, can we still go in if we feel like we're gonna start school on Tuesday and start getting things prepared?
We would appreciate that.
Well, I'm just asking that question. I mean, could we actually go in and start doing some stuff?
Their hourly employees and 12-month employees are different from the scenario I just talked about.
Okay.
And yes, we're expected to go in or use leave. That's simple for us. 12-month employees, we don't have a lot of options.
If we feel comfortable going on
Yes.
in, go on in and start doing it.
And we greatly appreciate that. Last year, I went and shoveled sidewalks at the central office as well, because we want people to be able to, when they do come in, to be as safe as possible. We understand there's a lot of square footage of ground and those type of things, so yes. You're not held to what everybody else is, unless it is something severe that there's a special message on. But for the most part, yes, you can come in and work,
Okay, that's
and
good.
we appreciate it.
Because I've had that question a few times.
Any other questions? Well, guys, thank you very much. I started 2 minutes late, I ended 2 minutes late. The next meeting, yes, ma'am?
I'm sorry,
That's
just
all
a
right.
quick announcement. I know you sent out an email about this, but just if this group would help us to remind everybody, be sure and do your health insurance open enrollment.
Yes. That, if you were on a different plan and you do not update it, it automatically is gonna revert to the 70-30 plan. And if do not do the tobacco attestation form, you're going to be charged more for that 70-30 plan. If you do not act, there is a penalty, basically. So please go update that form and share that with anybody and everybody that you see.
But if someone had denied their coverage, we had this question in our school, and continues to want to deny it altogether, do they have to go back in, or once they've denied it, it's still denied?
I think they have to redo it every year. They have to redo it every year.
The default would be a go in.
That was my
Go
response.
in.
So check
I don't work
in.
for Blue Cross Blue Shield. I don't know what but go in and do what you need to do.
I think every year all medical resets back to the 70-30.
Okay.
So, yeah, everybody will be.
Guys, thank y'all very much. It's on your calendar for the next meeting, but I will send out an email reminder as well. But thank you for what you do, and thank you for serving on this committee. Thank y'all. Have a good day.